Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am here with a fabulous group of authors. My name's Lisa Daly. I'm moderating today. And today we're going to be talking about turning real jobs into fiction. How journalists, law enforcement, lawyers, doctors, and everybody else can use their real life experience to write fiction. So my first guest I want to introduce is R.G. Belsky. I guess you're not my first guest, I'm just here for you. R.G. Belsky is a longtime journalist who's worked as a top editor for the New York Post, New York Daily News, Star Magazine. He's written 14 mystery novels, including his latest, The Last Scoop, which just came out, in his series about TV newswoman Claire Carlson. So welcome, say hello.
Hi. And I'll just add in my bio, you left out probably the most impressive one was NBC News, and it also, of course, relates to my character, who's a TV newswoman. But yeah, I just took the path of the easiest way to go, and I've been in the media all my life, so when I started writing fiction, I was like, well, I'll just take all this knowledge and write. I don't have to do any research. And I think there's a lot of advantage to doing that, writing about something you do in your real life, because obviously you bring an insider's knowledge. Nobody can say that you don't know what you're talking about. And so I've drawn on big stories I've done and media people I knew in my books. But there's downsides too, because it's not quite as easy as doing that. So it can get complicated. But I think for a lot of people, being able to write about what you know because you've done it is a big advantage.
I think that's true. So John Dobbyn, you are the author of 6 books, legal thriller series featuring defense trial attorneys Michael Knight and Lex Devlin. The last novel in your series is High Stakes. So here's a question. Can a non-lawyer write a legal thriller?
Hi, Lisa, and welcome to our panel. It's a distinguished panel. It's an honor to be with all you good people. And that's a very good question. I was on a panel at one of the previous Thriller Fests in which that was the subject. Can a non-lawyer write a legal thriller? And I can remember at the time that I think I was the only one on the panel who came to the conclusion, probably the politically incorrect conclusion, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason I say that is this. I think Dick had it absolutely right. You tend to write about what you know, and you don't write about what you don't know. Before I lay down any rules, let me suggest that after 25 years, I've come to one conclusion, that there is really only one rule that is absolutely unbreakable in writing fiction, and that one rule is there are no rules. As long as you do it well, you can do anything that you want. Every rule that I've ever heard of has been broken by good authors. The problem that I have with a non-lawyer writing a legal thriller is that you find when you're in practice, and I'm sure that the lawyers on the panel and Tammy, the doctor in her field, realize that when you talk to other people in the field, there's a pattern, there's a patter, there's a rhythm to the way you speak to each other. There's a choice of words that you use when you talk to each other that you would only know if you'd actually been in that situation, and probably been in that situation for some years. The most perfect example of it, I heard when Doug Lyle, who's also an Oceanview author now. Doug is a physician. I believe he's a cardiologist. Doug, I remember, was saying that when he picked up a book recently, it was written by somebody who didn't specify whether it was a doctor or not. And part of the dialogue was this. One doctor said to another, "What did he die of?" And the other doctor said, "He died of a myocardial infarct." And the other doctor said, I see. And now that sounds perfectly logical to me. But if I'm a doctor reading that, which Doug was, he said, instantly I knew that this was not written by a doctor. No doctor would ever say that to another doctor. Why? They would have said he died of an MI.
Right.
What happens when that happens? It's a minor point. It's a minor mistake. And it's a who cares, partially. But if you spot a glitch like that, then part of the trust leaves, and part of the, gee, whatever the author says, I'm inclined to believe, part of that disappears. And I think that takes away from the ability of the author to really grab and hold the reader.
I think that's true. So, David Putnam, you were in law enforcement for 30 some years, right?
Right.
You are the crime fighter turned crime writer. Bruno Johnson series, which I love. The Heartless is the latest. And so here's what I want to know. I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I love your work. My mother, as you know, is like a major fan of your books. So lots of law enforcement in your backstory, your personal backstory. So what do you think? Do you think you can write a cop if you've never been a cop?
Well, it's not a matter of it's what you can get away with. You know, there's in the reading world, people think that a cop gets fired, he loses his retirement, and that's not true. But it's used as a major motivator. So it's whatever the reader is used to, you can get away with, and that's what you really got to use as your standard. If you're worried about alienating attorneys, readers, then you're talking to a smaller wedge of your reading public. I try to write everything exactly the way it happened. The first book, The Innocence, is 50% true and Reckless is 80% true. But at the same time, I've had people email me and say, that doesn't happen in a jail. The crooks don't walk around free in a jail, you know, and I wrote it just the way it happened. So it's a matter of what the readers are willing to accept.
Well, that's interesting. David Goodwin, your debut novel came out smack in the middle of a pandemic, Diver's Paradise, which is incredibly awesome. And you're a little different in that you didn't write about your profession so much as your deepest love. So, right? You're a diver.
Thanks for inviting me to this. I'm honored to be here. I'm unlike the rest of the panelists because I wrote about something I know nothing about. I wrote about a retired police detective. So, but yes, the diving was the glue kind of that put this book together, and the fact that it took place on the island of Bonaire, which I've visited many times and have many friends. So, you know, one way I got around that, they say write about what you know. And so I wrote about the island. I wrote about a little bit of diving. It's got small airplanes in the book, and you know, I'm kind of a gun aficionado, so there was some technical stuff about firearms. But what I did to make sure that you know, I was able to gain some credibility with the readers on the law enforcement part is, number one, I didn't make it too procedural. It was much more about the characters, what they were going through, and how they related to each other. Second thing is, I have about 4 or 5 beta readers who are in different areas of law enforcement, be it ICE, patrol officers, detectives, FBI, things like that. So that helped me an awful lot because they pointed out some things where I could either expound upon or collapse upon and stuff like that. So that helped an awful lot. But the fact that it's about the characters on the island and the diving and things like that was good. The investigation is almost secondary to the rest of it.
That's cool. Dr. Tammy Giuliano, so you are a doctor. You have written a new medical thriller, which is coming out in 2021, right?
Yes.
Yes, it's called Fatal Intent. It's going to be published in March 2021, which has to be super exciting. So how did you use your experience as a doctor in the book?
Well, I definitely set it in a hospital, partly, and the protagonist is an anesthesiologist, very much like me. So it was natural to sort of mimic my career in the writing. And the challenges I found was the level of both accuracy, as you mentioned. People don't realize that it works the way it does, and I've had many beta readers tell me that I was wrong, which is always amusing, but also how much detail to include beyond what people really want to know. It's a challenge to find that middle ground.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so on this panel, we have 3 very experienced authors, and we have 2 debut novelists. So here's what I want to know from David, John Dobbyn, and Dick Belsky. What is the one piece of writing advice that you wish that you had known earlier in your career? David, I'm going to start with you.
Yikes.
No pressure.
I was told from the very beginning, I started writing in 1989, and this instructor wrote on a grease board, the one thing you have to do is persevere. And so I took him at his word, and I was on my 38th manuscript before I sold the first one. So
Oh my
you have,
gosh.
for me, you have to write every day, and you have to continue to try and build your craft level. So I would say continue to learn throughout your writing attempts.
38 manuscripts is incredible. I'm so glad you stuck with it. That's amazing. That's completely amazing. All right, John, what's the one piece of writing advice that you wish you had known early on in your career? Doesn't have to be writing advice, just one piece of advice.
Human advice. You know, it's funny. I agree with David, and from a different perspective. When I got into writing about 25 years ago, I had absolutely no desire to do it, but I took just on a whim. I took a course with the mainline night school, and the only thing that interested me at the time, even vaguely, was creative writing. And for that course, I wrote a short story, and the teacher was kind enough to suggest I send it to a magazine, Mike Shane's Mystery Magazine. I did, and God provided lightning, and they bought it and published it, which was a fluke because I had no idea what I was doing. Anyway, I followed. At that point, I was hooked. So for the next 6 years, David, for the next 6 years, I wrote short stories that I bounced off of every publication but the phone book. And I collected enough rejection slips to paper our house. But my wife hung in there. She was the one who had the persistence. She had a great idea. Every time you drop a manuscript in the mailbox, as soon as you get home, start the next one. Because by the time the rejection slip comes, you'll be halfway into it, and then you'll be induced to continue on. In other words, David, just what you said, persist, stay with it. And that went on for 6 years. The thing that turned the tide was I sent one of them to, I occasionally would send them to Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, which is supposed to be the leading mystery magazine, the world's leading mystery magazine. And I've never heard anybody say it wasn't. I figured if I'm going to get a rejection slip, it might as well have some class. I finally got a rejection slip back, and God love her, the editor-in-chief hand wrote in the margin, "You're getting close, don't quit."
Aww.
And she bought the next one, and she bought the next 22, as a matter of fact, and that started the whole thing. But David, if it hadn't been for my wife's insistence on persistence, I'd be a plumber.
That is awesome. All right, R.G. Belsky, you're going to wrap it up today. So what's the
yeah, I was thinking about this. Well, I think that, to me, the one thing that I've learned, and it took me a while to accept this, is basically not to listen to any rules anybody tells you. Whatever you hear, you kind of got to just ignore and write what you want and keep writing. The first novel I ever tried to write was a Vietnam novel. It wasn't a mystery, it was a Vietnam novel, because I had been in Vietnam, and I thought, and I was told by had an agent, everybody, oh, nobody cares about Vietnam. Nobody wants to read about it. Then, of course, it became a huge thing a few years later with all the movies, Platoon and Apocalypse Now and all the others. So I missed out on that. And then my first mystery was called One for the Money. We played around with this idea. Well, I could do future ones in a series with the number 2 for the show, 3 for something. And I started like, nah, that would never work. And then, of course, Janet Ivanovich, made an industry out of doing the numbers thing, So I've been through this. John was talking about rejection slips, and I'm one of these people, like I don't know why I keep them, just for some sort of weird thing. And every once in a while I'll go back and look at ones from early years, and they're hilarious because, they'll be like, you can't write about the mob. Nobody cares about the mob. You can't write about journalists. Nobody cares about journalists. I love your story, but your character is no good. Oh, I love the character of the story. This is all in the same book, So I think you have to believe in yourself. I think you have to, and to me, this even extends, and I know I'm in the minority on this, but, David talked about like beta readers. Beta readers got to be somebody you really trust their opinion, because I think sometimes authors give something to beta readers, to a group, and then people make all these comments. And my feeling is it's not their book, it's my book. And I want to write what I want to write and what I believe in, and hope for the best out of that. So I didn't always follow those rules, but I try to do that now.
That is awesome advice. Thank you guys all so much for sharing your wisdom today. And thanks for watching, everybody.